It's going to be a longer, more difficult process, I think, than markets are accounting for right now. Will China come out on the other side of this? Yes, it will. But it's a bumpy ride. Right now, extremely unpredictable scenarios rising before us. And the temptation, I think, to either halt or reverse or somewhat halt, somewhat reverse, whether it's like a piecemeal approach, is going to be great for a lot of political leaders. And we're going to be up and down for a while, I think.
And we've seen this before, and especially here in Singapore. You've seen the reopening, you've seen a wave, and then the restrictions come back, perhaps not in full force, but the restrictions do come back. So is it going to be the same playbook in China, or do vaccination rates, which is the important factor here, inevitably have to go with this dynamic?
I think you're going to see a lot of local, provincial, municipal leaders sort of take the approach that they think will protect them, that they are incentivized personally to follow. So I think it'll be uneven. If you talk about, blueprints, and this, just to give you an idea of how severe this might be, Nature magazine, the science journal, has been reporting a lot of how, if you look at what happened in Hong Kong in February, this is a country that had the Pfizer, or not a country rather, but this is a part of China that had the Pfizer vaccine. This is a part of China that had, more antibodies built into the population and a much higher number of ICU beds per capita than China does.
Right.
So by some estimates, half of the population was infected. They had about 9,000 deaths. If you extrapolate that out to China, and of course, it's not apples and apples, but there's some forecasts that are frightening, that are scary.
1.4 billion population and an aging population at that. Nandi has a question.
But it really begs the question, why wasn't the time when China was locked down for so many months, why wasn't it used to shore up the healthcare system with more ICU beds and also to get more jabs in arms, Ted?
Mandy, that's a great question. And honestly, we don't know the extent to which that time might have been used to increase the number of ICU beds. But it's a big country, and there is a lot of ground to make up. Also, when you think about healthcare in China, the highest levels of healthcare are very urban, whereas we have a very large, very, very large rural population that's not going to have access to those ICU beds. Even if they do increase the number overall, they might not be where they need them to be.
So if indeed we do see an increase in mortalities, God forbid, as China gradually cracks open the doors, and we do see an overwhelming of the healthcare system, what kind of political blowback might there be, particularly on the guy at the top, Xi Jinping?
If you're the boss and she's the boss, you're going to have to own the consequences. He had to own the consequences of the lockdown, and he'll end up owning the consequences of the reopening. But I don't think this is too great of a threat to him, because if you think about it, if you think about the protests and what occurred there, the people were pushed into a corner. They decided they can't take it anymore, holding up white sheets of paper saying, "We want our freedom, we want our liberty back." And so in a way, it can be argued on Xi's behalf. He won't make the argument, but others will make the argument for him. Well, we're giving you what you asked for. We're responding to the desire of the people. And so in a way, the consequences can sort of be shunted off to the people themselves.
Ted, the vaccine, Sinovac, it's 55-60% effective. It works, but efficacy rates are an issue. We know that. I'm just wondering whether China is still open to having a conversation with the Europeans or other agencies with a view of a joint venture, whether it's BioNTech, whether it's Moderna.
There was a report in the FT, I think it was in October, that China had actually approached Moderna and said that they'd like their IP on their mRNA vaccine. Moderna said no, understandably. Another part of the problem that China faces there is that internally in China, there's been a great deal of misinformation put out by the government about the safety, or what they call lack of safety, around these Western vaccines. And so they become a victim of their own narrative, the own sort of like China COVID victory narrative, where it's like, well, our system works, their system failed, which was an argument that you could very plausibly make, this time last year. But now there's going to be impediments, I think, they'll have to reverse a lot of their language, and that's not desirable politically.
Indeed, yes, and this is where vaccine diplomacy and vaccine nationalism go head to head, right? And all options have to be on the table. Ted, the COVID narrative coming out of China is a big part of the traffic on CNBC.com. Indeed. What else is going on? What else, in terms of the content, is doing the rounds and getting the eyeballs?
As you might expect, that inflation number out of the U.S. is the big story right now, and the market reaction to it. The U.S. market reaction was actually kind of interesting. It popped like crazy at the beginning, and then over the course of the day, people got a little bit more sober, pulled back a little bit. Also, our own Arjun Karpal did a story about Binance yesterday and how that exchange temporarily halted withdrawals of one so-called stablecoin. Apparently what was going on there is that they were sort of like rebalancing, I guess you could call it, one stable coin for another stable coin. And then, as always, readers everywhere, including in Asia Pacific, they're very interested in the Ukraine war. We had some interesting headlines overnight. The U.S., according to NBC News, is going to provide Patriot anti-missile systems to Ukraine on some level. And it looks like the IAEA is going to have people on the ground to monitor those 4 nuclear power plants within Ukraine, with people permanently stationed there on the ground, which is probably good news. Indeed.